Welcome to the Tech Transfer Podcast. This is Dave Brown, and I'm here with Haile Terry today, who is a Levinthal Fellow was part of the Levinthal Fellowship program here at BYU. So we're going to learn what that's all about. But Haile, first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm a computer science major. I have minors in international development and Arabic. I've been at BYU since 2018, and I'm hopefully graduating this fall. So, yeah, I got involved in the Levinthal Fellowship and Sandbox in fall 22. So,
And you're just generally, you're kind of interested in kind of these social startups as well, right? It seems like.
yeah, I want to combine my interest in international development with computer science and make software engineering more accessible and affordable to nonprofits and NGOs, specifically those working on environmental degradation around the world. So I want to make it so that I want to build custom software products for nonprofits that they can't afford to pay a usual price, because software engineering is usually pretty expensive. So I want to make it more affordable because I think it would really help productivity with social impact organizations.
Oh, fantastic. And what kinds of software problems would they be looking to address typically? Or what is an example?
It can really range, but my experience with nonprofits has been that they're extremely technologically behind. My mom actually runs a nonprofit at home, and I love the work they do. I grew up with them. My mom's been the president since I was 3, so it's like been a big part of my life. And but they host these events every month, and they have paper forms, so they have to pay a company to print 200 to 300 forms, and they go pick them up. They bring them. Everybody has to stand in line and wait to go fill them out with one of the volunteers, and they just stand in another line to pay at a physical credit card machine. And then everybody just stands around waiting for a person to come out and call who's next in the queue. And they all have these little plastic things that show what number you are in the queue. All that could be done on a website, and that I could build up in like a weekend. But they've never they never paid anyone to do that. And I haven't done it yet because I've been really busy, but I'm thinking about doing it this weekend. Sorry, summer. Not
You could.
It's summer. So it's that type of thing where it's like, that's such a small thing that if I could just do that in like a weekend, it would make a huge difference in their productivity. They wouldn't have to pay for the forum. Their events would probably go a lot smoother. You wouldn't have people standing in the sun or standing in the rain, waiting around for so it's just that small thing where it's like, that's so easy for me to do, but they've never done it. And they could have done it like 20 years ago. So part of it is understanding why they haven't, because they all have different reasons why they haven't, necessarily addressed this with technology. So it's important to understand that. But yeah, that's what I want to do.
That's super interesting. So yeah, you can spend some time doing volunteer work, essentially creating a product for them, and then it scales because it's going to save them, who knows, hundreds of thousands of hours in the future. So fantastic. Yeah. Well, good. So before we get to the Levinthal Fellowship, that is like a subset of the Sandbox program. You mentioned you're in the Sandbox program. I've known like Jason Lau, I bet worked in my office in Tech Transfer.
I love Jason Lau.
Yeah, he was validating technology for us. Super nice guy, right? And so he's in the program with you. I think there are about 100 students in Sandbox, if I remember correctly. But will you tell us a little bit about how it works?
Yeah, so Sandbox it's still evolving. So my cohort, my experience is very different from the cohort the year before me. Our experience is very different from the year that's coming up, that's next year. But I'm part of this third cohort. So they had 2 years before us and kind of a pilot year that they call Sandbox 0. But so the way that Sandbox works is you have an application period, and ours was in November. The current cohort ended in January. So they're changing the application process a lot right now. But ours was in November. We applied. There was a lengthy application where you wrote a bunch of I guess it wasn't that long, but it was a lot of like prompts and essay kind of answers. Not essays, but like long answer. It wasn't just like what's your name and stuff. Like tell us the time that you solved a problem, and like what's the thing in your life that you're the most proud of achieving. Things like that. And then there's 3 roles. There's designers, product managers, and software engineers. And you apply in that role, and then they accept a certain number for each of those roles to come to a hackathon. You come to an in-person hackathon, which the structure of it has changed a lot every single year. But in my year, it was a like 12 to 13 hour, you come at like 9 in the morning, leave at 10 p.m. And you basically, it's like a mini Sandbox. So you form a group with other students in other roles. So whatever your role is, you want to get a similar makeup to what you would have in actual Sandbox, which is usually a PM, one or two software engineers and a designer, although we have a lot of freedom with that in Sandbox, but at the time, that's how the hackathon was structured. So you form a team, and then you come to the hackathon and you build a product in 12 hours. And then you have to present it at the end of the day. And so it's kind of testing everybody on the skills that they would have to do in Sandbox in a much smaller thing. So the PM, the product managers, have to demonstrate that they can find a problem, talk to people who could be potential customers, learn what could be a potential solution, propose that, and then iterate on it and make it better, and then sell it to people. That's what PMs have to do. Engineers, I'm an engineer, we're showing that we can code and develop and that we know how to manage our own tech stack, because in Sandbox, we're going to be responsible for it. There's not going to be anybody over us managing our code. So we have to be able to do that ourselves. And then designers, similar thing, they have to show that they can design something and iterate on it during a short period, because that's what you're going to be doing over Sandbox, but over a period of 12 months. So after the hackathon, there's acceptances. And then there are some smaller programs within Sandbox that you can apply to after the hackathon. The Levinthal Fellowship was part of that. It's changed a little bit now, but that was part of that. And then so that was in November. And then in winter semester of 2023, we took a 1.5 credit class on ideation and team formation. So it's basically teaching us, it wasn't time to start Sandbox yet, because Sandbox is a calendar year or a school calendar year. And so it starts in the fall, but it was preparing us for Sandbox. It was saying, hey, the most successful teams in the previous cohort have been the ones they started to get to know each other early, and they started to think about ideas early. And so we want to get you starting on that as soon as possible, so that by the time September rolls around, you already have your team, you already have your idea, you can hit the ground running. And so we just took a 1.5 credit class, learning how to do that, starting to get to know each other. We had a retreat to just get to know each other outside of school. And then we were encouraged to meet up in small groups and practice coming up with ideas, practice working together, see who you gravitate towards. And then over the summer, you're kind of left to your own devices. Some teams work together, some teams kind of take the summer off, and a lot of people aren't in teams yet, but some people work over the summer, a lot of people don't. And then in the fall, you start with a retreat right before school starts, where you make sure you have a team, make sure you know what your idea is, and then first day of school, you hit the ground running. And so,
you know what?
Yeah.
So I mentioned Jason worked in our office. So that summer, he came and worked in our office, tech transfer. Pretty smart, because he was just looking through all our technologies for ideas, essentially. So he's a product manager. He was out doing his work. So
yeah, I love that. I was talking to, actually two of his team members, Tanner and Xander, were in the Levinthal Fellowship with me. And so I've talked to them a lot. I just love all those guys on that team. And I thought that was a really cool, I was like, man, what a good hookup to be hearing about all these pet ideas and things. That was pretty cool.
So and future Sandbox students, I should say, if someone's in the program now, going to start the program next year, they should apply to come work for us this summer. Do you like Jason? But anyway.
Yeah, I think that really helped Jason and their team. I think that was a really big, I think that worked really well for them. So then during the school year, Sandbox is kind of your main thing. Some people don't take anything except Sandbox. Some people, Sandbox, they're just kind of doing it for the year. It really depends. A lot of people in Sandbox have different goals, different things that they're working toward. And your goals also change during Sandbox. You may start thinking, oh, I'm not going to build a company. And then something is taking off and you're like, actually, maybe I do want to do this. Or or vice versa, or your goals may not change. And there's a lot of vacillating of maybe I do want that, maybe I don't, maybe I do, it's a very, it's not a static process. But so some people only take Sandbox, some people take other classes, but you take 8 to 9-ish. It depends on your role and it depends on the year, because they're changing it all the time. But you take around 8 to 9 credits both semesters. So you can take other classes, you can not. I have always taken other classes. I've taken a lot of other classes, actually. But you're expected to work 20 to 25 to 30, depending on your goals and the time of year, 20 to 30 hours a week on your program. And so even if you don't have a team, because teams actually change a lot. Even if you don't have a team or you don't have an idea, you should be putting in that time to then find a team and find it. And so you have classes, but most of and a couple assignments, but most of what you do is just that work on your own, and it's self-reported. There's a lot of autonomy, there's a lot of independence, and a lot of responsibility of expecting you to handle the workload yourself and do what works best for you. Like they're not going to hold your hand through it. So
And your other classes were probably computer science classes, right?
yeah, and my minors. I have just been taking Arabic classes and then computer science classes. Yeah,
Okay.
and gen ed. I have a couple gen ed left, so I've been trying to finish those.
So this year of Sandbox, it gives you a year to work on your startup company. What did it fit well? For business students, it's out of the business school. It's run by the Rollins Center, which is the entrepreneurship center here. So for business students, it should fit in really well. But it sounds like for you as a computer science student, it fit as well. Like worked with your plan for graduation.
Yeah. So the CS major is very well paired with Sandbox. As long as you're not too far into your electives, you can get half your elective credits from Sandbox. So CS majors you take like 18 credits from Sandbox, but some of those credits are entrepreneurship classes. But of those credits, 12 of them go to the CS major, and you have to take 24 elective credits for the CS major. So automatically you have half of them. If you're a software engineering emphasis, you have to take the capstone. Half of those 12 credits are the capstone. So you just have the capstone out of the way. And the capstone, a lot of people prefer to do Sandbox if they're software engineering emphases, because the capstone is either do Sandbox or do this class where you basically build a product for another company that you don't own and you don't get paid for. And so people are like, well, with Sandbox, at least, if it takes off and I made some money, I might not make money, but at least I own it.
So, that's smart.
Yeah. So I'm not a software engineering emphasis, but I'm just a CS major. But yeah, it took up half of my electives. So yeah, that worked really well.
Well, good. So great. So by the end of the year, hopefully you're launching a company. That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But somewhere along the line, you learned about the Levinthal Fellowship. How did that happen?
Yeah. So they told us about the Levinthal Fellowship in the recruiting phase, before the applications. And I was just like, oh, that sounds pretty interesting. It wasn't the reason I applied, but I was like, if I get in, I might be interested in that. And they just told us about, it's basically, there's kind of two parts of the Levinthal Fellowship. There's a class and then there's a trip, and it's like a work internship type thing. And so they told us about both of those, but not a huge amount of details. So I thought that was interesting. And then once I got into Sandbox, I was very interested in the fellowship, because they talked about it again during the hackathon with more detail. And I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And so I knew as soon as I heard about it the second time, as soon as I heard more details, I was like, I need to do that. It just felt like I was in the right place at the right time to learn about it, and I needed to do it. And it also felt like it was perfect for me because of my interests, because it's computer science and entrepreneurship and social impact. And so I was like, that's perfect. And so after we found out that we were accepted, we were told of these various programs within Sandbox that we could apply to. There's a study abroad program, and then there's the Levinthal Fellowship. And they were like, if you're interested in that, fill out this application, tell us if you're interested in either, and if you're interested in both, tell us which one you prefer. So I was interested in both, but I said I preferred the Levinthal Fellowship. And then it was a very short application. It was just your name and if you're interested, nothing else. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if that's enough information. I don't know if they know enough about me. So many people want this. So many people want this fellowship. I don't know if I'm going to get in just from this small application and what was on my Sandbox application. Because before Sandbox, I had almost no experience. My resume was really not that impressive or interesting. And I was like, I know that I have a lot of strengths, but I don't think those came across. And so I was very anxious that I wouldn't get it, even though it seemed perfect. So I actually went and I found Chris Crittenden, the leader of Sandbox or director of Sandbox. And I said, hey, do you have a couple minutes? I want to talk to you. I want to tell you why you should accept me for the Levinthal Fellowship. And I personally believe that's why I got it. I don't know for sure, but
that's cool. So, and if people don't know, so Chris Crittenden was the director of the Rollins Center. Now it's Mike Hendren as of last May or June, I believe.
Yeah.
But it was Chris, and Chris started the Sandbox program. And then I believe it was his connection with Mike Levinthal that made that fellowship happen. I think that's probably what happened.
Yeah, I don't know the exact order of events, but yeah, Chris and Mike definitely, I think Chris is what got Mike involved.
And then, so for the fellowship, the abroad part, so you're studying Arabic. How's your Spanish? Because they sent you to Mexico City, right?
Yeah, it's okay. I studied Spanish in high school, but, a lot of people did and never reached fluency. I did a study abroad in Ecuador, and I started to kind of learn some Spanish towards the end, but not very well. And then having learned Arabic kind of replaced the Spanish. So I was actually kind of worried about that going to Mexico. I was like, man, I can't remember any Spanish. I probably lost it all. But within 2 or 3 days of being in Mexico City, it came back pretty well. And then about 3 weeks in, I had reached like conversational fluency. So I was actually really, really pleased with the progress that I made with my language there. So now I'm pretty good at Spanish.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what was during that month, what is the work that you do in Mexico City?
So we put ourselves into teams within the fellowship. So there were 14 students. We had 4 teams. And each team works with at ours, it's a little different now, but ours was working with local small businesses to provide business and software consultancy and freelance work. So with ours, we were working with a digital marketing agency, and we were working on fixing his website. He had a very, very bad DNS error that took a long time to fix. And then we're also doing some web development. Other teams did some more business work, and then a lot of teams did web development. That was the big thing that we did. That was probably the biggest one, was web development. And then, but each team ranged a lot. There was one team working with a furniture rental shop, and then one team was working with like a medical supplies company, and I can't remember what the fourth one was. But yeah, so there was quite a range of activities that we were working on each day.
Was it mostly software work that they were doing for these other companies?
Well, each team had a PM. Well, most teams had a PM on them, so they weren't doing software work. They were also doing business stuff. But yeah, the majority of the fellows were engineers, so a lot of it was computer stuff.
Okay, pretty great experience. You were saying your resume was boring before. It's not boring. It's super interesting. I see it on LinkedIn. So that is such great experience. And thanks for telling us about it. I gather from your social media post you would recommend it to other students. And
Absolutely.
and then I'm also wondering, and how many Levinthal Fellows did they have? How many were in your group?
14. There were 14 in my cohort.
Okay. And then I know we need to wrap up soon, but you're in the Sandbox program. Can you talk about what you're working on there, or is that a wrap, so you're still developing?
Yeah, no, I can talk about it. So my team and I, we've decided that we're not going to continue past April because my co-founder and I, we both have other things that we're planning on. I'm going to Jordan for my Arabic minor, and she is trying to apply to a PhD. But before we finish, we just really want to do something, impactful. And so we've been working on, we were working on senior living for a while, trying to make senior living easier to find, specifically building Zillow for senior living. We found it pretty difficult to get in touch with people who are looking for senior living, and we kept instead getting in touch with caregivers for people with dementia. And so we decided to pivot to that. And so right now we're working on an initiative for caregiver wellbeing, specifically mental health and physical health, and the relationship between exercise and caregiver mental health and burnout. Ooh. So we're planning an event for this week, actually, for caregiver wellbeing, teaching how to use exercise to fight dementia. And then after that, we're gonna use what we learned from that to then figure out what we're gonna do for the next month.
Okay, that is super interesting. If you get a chance, like Haile, I know you have a million things going on, but Nancy Folda in computer science here, she has worked with a collaborator. Have you talked to her about her home care technology at all? We have a technology.
I talked to her a while ago. I haven't talked to her recently.
Oh yeah, so she and a colleague at another university have developed an app where it's to kind of monitor the mental health of a caregiver at home. We're kind of working on that. It's different than what you're doing, but it's right in the same problem area. So anyway, could be interesting for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's great.
Great. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on here and sharing your experience. Well, I'll ask you one last question. So in tech transfer, like with Jason or whoever else, we're trying to provide ideas for student entrepreneurs and others. How hard is it for the student groups to come up with their ideas, or do most people enter the program kind of knowing what they want to do?
Oh, no, that's one of the biggest hurdles for Sandbox. That's why the class is team formation and ideation, because the idea is essential. And a lot of us spend most of Sandbox working on an idea, getting a little far in it, realizing it's not going to work, and then moving on to something else. And that moving on to something else can be hard. Sometimes it's not, because sometimes you found other ideas as you were exploring that you were like, oh, well, if that doesn't work, let's go over here. But sometimes it's a big change, and sometimes you don't know where to go. And so, yeah, that's a huge burden for Sandbox students.
Okay, great. Well, if we can help, I hope they let us know. But Haley, thanks for what you're doing. It's so great. BYU students are the best, and you're out there doing some really interesting things to help people. Appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on here to talk about the fellowship with us.
Yeah, of course.